Come once again to be part of our talk show, and we are blessed to be with one of our guests. He is Mr. Frederick Namakajo Derek, and we are very much interested with the current trend of events, especially the national events regarding with the reading of the national budget, declaration of the financial, both the income and expenditure of the country. But tonight, our concern is about the issue of the national debt policy, Uganda debt acquisition policy. My name is Dr. Joseph Tindebwa, and you're welcome, Council Derek. You can introduce yourself further. I normally don't introduce all your titles, but tonight, please talk to the viewers.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Joseph Tindebwa. Once again, my name is Namakajo Derek Frederick, and a legal partner with GM Chibirige Company Advocate located at Mabirizi Complex 6th level. As well as I work with Foundation for Human Rights Initiative as a legal officer. Issues regarding legal aid and pro bono services, also that is my area of passion. That is where I base to serve my country in a humanitarian ground as a human rights activist. Whereas with Wakiso District Human Rights Committee, those are stationed on Hoima Road. You can find us on at the Wakiso District headquarters, and just ask for the office of. We are really ready to welcome you and serve you, to give free legal aid services to the citizenry. Lastly, I'm an aspirant of IALA, that is the East African Legislative Assembly, year 2022 to year 2027, and of recent the Office of the Clerk has just issued a roadmap. Yes, and my party was served today morning.
With
the Justice Forum, yes, where I work as a Secretary Legal Affairs on the party cabinet. We were served today morning with a copy from the Clerk to Parliament about the roadmap of IALA elections, which I personally, together with my comrades, we have reservations regarding to the same, and I believe very soon we shall be letting the world know on the kind of reservations we have. Lastly, I just thank the host, Dr. Tindebwa, and Smart 24 management really for this wonderful opportunity, the opportunity being given to the youth. I'm still a youth. That's why whenever even I'm vying for any position, I come up as a youth. My coming up on the IALA candidature is as a youth and on behalf of the youth. So really, thank you, Smart 24 Television, for this opportunity given to the youth, allowing the youth come up to dissect matters of national importance, not perhaps political matters as most youths are being swayed with, but business really affecting the backbone of the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dear viewers, our basic central point of discussion is hinted on the effect of Uganda's debt acquisition policy. And we also look at the commercial banks' credit policy. Does the call for a limit for borrowing solve citizen economic challenges? Of recent, we were able to have the expression of views by different political key players, and this guy, the National Unity Platform, won by names MP of Butambala.
Yeah, Mwanga
Chivumbi. He representing the opinion of the opposition under the National Unity Platform. He called for limit on borrowing, especially the national debt acquisition, for purpose of reflecting on where in 2020 the national debt of Uganda amounted approximately 44.1%. of the GDP. Uganda national debt from 2016 to 2026 in relation to gross domestic product, according to the source of the Bank of Uganda, without mailing to the prospectus in regard to the national debt, 2021, the previous financial year, and in comparison to the GDP, it was 49.08. And this is, it increased from 2018, as far as from 2018, which was 34.75. Currently, we understand that very soon the budget will be read and approved because the minister has already done his file.
He has presented the document.
Yes, has presented the document, and yet there is a concern about our economy.
True.
That Uganda has accumulated a staggering debt of 65 trillion shillings, the public debt, and that was from 49. We will continue with revealing much more information. You are welcome, Council Derek Namakaju, and presenting your analytical point of view and possible guidance in this matter is highly appreciated to the country.
Yes, Doctor, you've talked about the current debt perhaps being of around 65 trillion Ugandan shillings as of now. In comparison to the 2021 perhaps percentage of the GDP of the national debt amounting to around 49.08%. That is where we have now to start from. You see, persons perhaps who are not so keen in following the economy of the country, whereby the economy is the backbone of this beloved country, Uganda. We have youths are concentrating more on the political wing. What is the trending politics? What are the trending politics? What is the new news coming up from the political wing? And we forget the economical or the economic wing. But whenever we talk about the Uganda's debt acquisition policy, here now we are talking about two different things. At first, we're talking about the debt, the national debt of Uganda, and how this debt is being acquisitioned, how this debt is keeping on to accumulate. We need to also know, do we have sufficient policies in play ensuring that really the acquisition of the national debt is being moderated or is being supervised? So whenever we talk about Uganda's debt acquisition, every Ugandan is owed to understand the point we're talking about. Just to give an empirical evidence on the point of public debt. All of us know that whenever we talk about public debt, it in one way or another affects the economic growth of the country, because you are talking about money vis-a-vis the structure, vis-a-vis GDP of the country. So in whatever way the economic growth of the country is being affected, whether positively or negatively, that is a point of every citizenry to conclude upon. Driving you back in 1996, I mean in 1990s, because the issue of public debt has not just come in late 20s. In 1990s, Uganda, under the highly indebted poor countries initiative, that is the HIPS country initiatives, was being established by some countries, such as the Great Eight countries, which around in 1999 came and staged in Scotland. And said, wait, we have a lot of poor countries globally, and Uganda was part of the poorest countries by then. And on top of being a poor country, other element of being indebted. You get my point? You're a highly indebted country. At the same time, you're a highly country in the world.
I will pose a question as we go on alongside the way in our discussion.
Please.
I'm very well aware that you belong to a political party, which has, of course, a party policy frame platform. And the challenges Uganda faces may be that that leads Uganda to borrow. They may be known, or maybe they can be known today. Do you think, according to your party policy agenda, what else could Uganda do best? Or we can be able to overcome such challenge where it's a poor country and yet maintain.
Yes, you see, Doctor, I would say that perhaps you're driving me speed in one way or another.
Oh.
Because
okay.
asking me for my party, indirectly asking for the party position in regarding to the public debt vis-a-vis the limiting.
I'm trying to guide the discussion.
Yes.
You will, let me 1 minute. You will. I desire, for purpose of the viewers, to follow. There is your independent opinion, even which you are entitled to, and there is also maybe the general perspective, the comparative, which I'm still enjoying. I'm not diverting at all. Then there is also the position of different. How can we approach this? By either in the political scientist point of view, we also welcome that. I kindly beg that.
In the same line, before we assume that we are talking to the economists, we have to first assume that we are talking to a national of Uganda, a citizen of Uganda, who is perhaps not fit to understand what are we referring to.
Okay, proceed on where we had reached this way.
Because we need to understand what are the effects, what do we mean by a public debt. This is a big challenge, a major challenge to not only the government but to the citizens, because with the citizens we end up paying a highly chargeable tax. No, as of now in the new amendment, income tax amendment, that is section 9, it is affecting section 89 QA of the prior Amendment Act of 2021. The government is presenting a bill, which bill is saying, wait, every citizen has to pay or has to furnish returns or has to file any particular document. But in circumstances that you fail to furnish the same, then you're obliged to pay a fine worth $50,000 US. In this time, it is not in Ugandan shillings. It is in dollars. And what is making us to pay that particular tax in dollars just because I've not furnished a return in the prescribed time? Yet even a penalty can be charged in Ugandan shillings. Why is the government at this time round is charging Ugandans, or is intending in the new bill of 2022 to charge Ugandans in American dollars? So these are the things we need a normal person now to understand. They then perhaps paying in dollars. But remember of recent, when landlords made it a must for all tenants in Kampala to pay rent in dollars, tenants came up under the association to fight that particular vice. And even the recently passed bill of the landlord-tenant bill, not to make the tenants pay in dollars, but now this time around they're paying in dollars. But that was just a glimpse of an eye to understand the issue as to why we need to understand public debate, the public debt. I was telling you that in 1990s, Uganda had to put in a request to be considered in the highly indebted poorest countries initiative. This is an initiative that those highly indebted poorest countries got an opportunity of being helped by cancellation of their public debts. The public debt by then Uganda almost was owing $650 million by our currency by then. So you can really calculate the $650 million vis-a-vis our currency in 1990. Uganda had to plead to some countries, the multilateral lenders, the bilateral lenders, amongst other big organizations and individuals, to be put in the highly indebted poorest countries and their debt to be cancelled. I assure you, by this particular initiative, whereby 65% of its debt by then was cancelled by the Great Eight, the G8 countries. By then, that is an organization of the Great Eight. It benefited. What does it mean? That the issue of public debt, the issue of national debt, has not just come to news of recent. It has been all over years since Uganda attained almost its independence. Furthermore, the debt stock raised from 2017 recently here. The debt stock of
that's 5 years ago.
5 years ago, the debt stock raised from 14.257 trillion Ugandan shillings, to around 35.3 billion trillion Ugandan shillings. What does it mean? An average there. Just from within 2017, the 14.257 trillion, that was the state in 2000. But in 2017, to have 35.3 billion, that means that as Uganda, we are still increasing by getting more debts. I'm not saying that debts are bad. Now, this is my personal opinion, which you wanted, Doctor, after at least giving some of the background that the public debt has not just come of recent. When you talk about a public debt is good.
Public debt is good.
A debt is good to a growing country.
Really?
A debt is good to a growing country. But it's not the must that every time I will come up to oppose. But a debt is good. What makes a debt to be bad is one, that is one, how policies are being formulated.
Debt management.
In ensuring that this debt is really sufficient and serves its purpose. 2. 3, is it really benefiting the citizens? 4, are we assuming or are we getting a debt which is consummate to our capacity to pay? Because ability to pay has to determine the level of debt we are getting. Now this is where, as a country, Uganda, we go wrong. That we don't determine our ability to pay. Rather, we just continue getting debts. Every time you get a debt, every time this money we get, what is it dealing with? I'm not saying this in bad faith, but remember of recent, when you were burying our Right Honorable Speaker Olanya, that according to the budget from the Minister Mili, came up, it was around 2-point-something billion, and whereby 1.8 billion wasn't available. Some ministers suggested that let us go into a debt. Really, is it sufficient for us to borrow 1.8 billion just to be invested in burial arrangements? That is a question. I'm not saying that it is bad, but is your capacity consummating the ability to pay that particular debt? It benefiting the citizenry? During the COVID times, we remember we received a lot of donations, grants, but among others, we also received loans from the IMF, among other organizations, to cater for this particular animal called COVID-19. Even of recent, yesterday, the Minister for Health presented to get around 650-something billion to cater for COVID-19.
There's also a debt what I've remembered. The Minister presented a request to borrow funds for completing Lubowa Hospital. Dear viewers, in that, and maybe what the guest is talking about, back to you over there, you may think that this is maybe a topic which is not necessary for you to think about. But while I was looking at this, and I will come back to you, we were able to track the calculation by economists by 2022, as we accumulated debt of 65, now reaching to a level of 65 trillion. That means that every Ugandan you are indebted, because we are talking about around, you are indebted to be paying every year, every month, 1.5 million. Initially, in what they call layman's language. And now, where we were coming to is the request, the presentation of a number of, by the ministry, not only Ministry of Health, at times there's what they refer as the other expenditure, which is normally concealed.
The classified,
yes.
Supplementary budget.
The supplementary budget, and they say in the supplementary budget we'll be able to accumulate this debt management. But there is something I need you to dig deeper into: the utilization of the debt. At first, when I said, is the debt good? Personally, to me, I couldn't admire and desire to go for a debt. A debt, it puts you under pressure. It is not all that easy if you are not sure, especially how you will be able to pay back. We will go back second round concerning the personal acquisition of debt and compare to the commercial banks. Sure. But in this first round, in this first session, we were going to deal with the national debt and how does it affect the country economy, and possibly how best is it maybe recommendable for us to go for debt. You can continue.
Doctor, you've talked about debt being bad, according to you.
To me,
yes. If we have to accept the fact that even the so-called roads in Kampala, if it is not a grant, they once developed, or they once constructed those towers complex on a loan.
But that's some who had their own money.
When we go to percentage, those who had their own money, they might be 5%. And 95, they are sustaining it on loans. We remember in COVID-19 lockdown, many came up to cry that please at least waive some of the interest or reduce the interest on loans. Why am I bringing this example is the government is not that different from the citizens. The only difference is that the government is an institution carrying out a public trust doctrine on behalf of the citizens. The government, in order to ensure that it gives services back to the people, it has to base this on what they are having in the basket. As of now, we call it a consolidated fund. How much are we having by the end of the year? The government, perhaps all other governments, or if it is me, the government, I couldn't enter into a public debt if at all. The main reason or the main factors to why governments end up entering into a national debt, entering into various debts, it is because what they are having in the basket is not sufficient to give good services to the people. That is the main reason as to why governments end up entering into debts. Now we have the issue of tax revenues vis-a-vis national debts. That as a government, you have to first consider, are the tax revenues sufficient for you to construct Lubowa Hospital vis-a-vis constructing roads, Kamudini Road, vis-a-vis constructing other? If not, then the government is going to end up weighing whether it enters into a national debt or not. But if the reasons really are sufficient for you to enter into a public debt, I have no reason as to why you enter into a national debt. But the question is that national debt going to serve its purpose? Overstraining your backbone When I talk about the backbone, are you getting a loan you're able to pay? Doctor, when you wake up one morning and you go to Centenary, you want to start up your business in Kabale, which business is worthy, but you don't have capacity to service that particular loan. Will you get the loan?
No.
What if you have the capacity? You're confident that you have the capacity to service it.
I told you it's me. I don't want it. That's what I have.
But
because there's
a business person.
I come back to your bit because there are some economies which are self-sustainable. The other day I had someone who came here to make a presentation and was, giving information, indeed teaching as the spirit of Smart 24 TV, and was referring some countries, including USA, that they do borrow in the, International Monetary Fund and World Bank. But yet there are countries which are just, positioned to donate. They donate funds, especially these developing countries. And remember, where we are talking of, our scenario is quite different. To guide our discussion, whereas our national budget will be to a certain tune of amount of money, 2021-2022, it is reflected that 17.2 trillion in the budget for the next financial year. It will be 15.7 will be borrowed money, and vis-a-vis the 17.2 trillion. And there is something that you are bringing into our discussion, that if you are given this amount of money, you have the capacity.
But
the capacity differs. First of all, you've talked about the capacity. It must be because you may say that I have the capacity, maybe I can pay. Like where we are standing as a country, maybe you can say we have the capacity we have with exploration, but now we go back to the prevailing circumstances. That's where we are going to. The economic factors, those which are global and those which are national. And that's where we come back to our discussion as I take it back to you. What are the opportunities that we should enjoy in borrowing as a country? And what are the challenges that we also are encountering as a country? And how are we projecting to go better than where we are? Because the economists, as you've searched information, they are worried that we are already reaching to a certain seal, 50%.
Indeed, and if we are worried that we have reached a certain seal of 20%, of 50%, that automatically means that Uganda got a debt which, without capacity to pay it. That is the first thing we have to consider, because the debt we are having now, it has not accumulated from 2020 or 2021. Do you agree? The debt has accumulated over years. Right now, we couldn't even be having time to talk about payment of debt which accumulated in 2000 or in 1999. At least we could be talking about a debt which accumulated in 2018. If we can still talk about payment of a debt accumulated in 1999 or 2000, that means that we don't have capacity to pay. 1. 2, we don't have will to pay. 3, we get the loan not with intention of serving its purpose. Because the same economists who are talking about having reached a seal are the same economists which are being consulted during the planning of the national budget. So the will to pay is not there. The capacity to pay, we don't have it. The intention of ensuring that the loan you have gotten is put into consideration is not there.
Our dear guest,
you asked. Because going into the goods and the bads of
the opportunities,
yes, the opportunities, those are
the challenges and possibly the reforms.
The reforms
or recommendation that will come later. But yes, this is the time around. The opportunities and the challenges we are to face if we're going through this discussion.
Slightly to click onto the goods, the opportunities, the benefits, the advantages we get from maybe getting the national debt. One is, upon you analyzing yourself, can Uganda really sustain itself only on tax revenues? That is, Uganda can't sustain itself on tax revenues. There are times where we shall need that particular debt to come into play. The money we have in consolidated fund we get from collection of taxes in Uganda domestically is not sufficient to ensure that if we need medicine, if we need to construct this whatever road, it is not sufficient. It is not enough. So on a given extent, there is need to go into that particular debt. I'm not saying that every time the government thinks of entering into a debt, you go. That is the most thing we have, the most challenge we have faced as Ugandan, that our debt is not being managed and the way of acquisition in this part being regulated. You talked about policy or reforms, among others. You see, over slightly, I'm not going to enter into that. We have various laws, various acts which are in place in ensuring that this particular public debt is being managed. An example I can give is the 2013 public debt management. But the question is it being followed? That is the question we need to ask ourselves. We have the medium-term debt management strategy, which ensured that it had to run from 2015 and 2019 to 2020. It is of recent. But the question is it being followed? That is the question. So the challenges we are likely to face, as obvious, one is seeing Uganda, the part of Africa, kneeling down on her knees to the so-called great countries to be declared a highly indebted poorest country once again, because it is too ashaming that the government over years ago came up and launched the National Development Plan 1, which we very well know, and also launched the National Development Plan 2. On top of that, it launched the Vision 2040. And on the Vision 2040 and those national plans sought to have Uganda coming away from the peasantry level to the lower middle income status by 2020. And perhaps to the upper middle income status by 2032. As of now, we are in 2020. The question is, have we at least attained that middle income status as per the Vision 2040? Why? And one of the reasons how we had to ensure that we reach the middle income status is to reduce on the national debt. As per the Vision 2040, among other national development plans. We had to reduce on the debt and to ensure that the debt we have is being cleared off. I remember a debate around 3 years ago. A person was saying that we have to increase tax so that we have the capacity to pay off the national debt we are having. I don't know whether you remember, Doctor. So the question is, ever since 2017, have we been able to pay the national debt we have been having? Have we been able to reduce on the consumption, on the acquisition of this particular national debt? Because it is good. Because the agenda is ensuring that Uganda by 2020 attains a middle income status.
By 2020.
As of the Vision 2040, it would have been it would have attained the middle income status together with the national development plans, the NDPs 1 and 2. But the question is, have we? Because everything has been on government's disposal, inclusive government entering into debts.
I am coming to you now for just to give us enlightenment. According to your analysis, as the government continue to desire, not only desire, but it's not optional, it's compelled to.
You're compelled.
You are compelled because
these two things are different, Doctor. One government might be compelled to, another government might be just enjoying to enter.
Can you enjoy what's not good for you?
If let me ask, gotten, and when it comes to accountability, when you read the Auditor General's report, how many debts have been put into consideration and utilization?
Okay, I've heard you now. I will not answer, but yet I will continue with my question. And we look at, while we're analyzing this and reflecting on what's the impact of taking much more of a national debt on the economic livelihoods of the people. We have already indicated that by the time the country is committing a hustle to acquire debts, it's because it has set targets and priorities, and maybe in one or the other, there is a lack of a balance. There is no balance. And in most cases, when we go back to the issue of GDP, the productivity for looking at our population, where we are dealing with issues of the economy, there must be an understanding of our level of productivity. Even as we are talking taxes being generated, collected, there are few Ugandans who are contributing to the generation of these taxes. In most cases, we normally refer that yes, even now as goods are commodities or prices. I mean prices for commodities, and the hiking of prices has been very much more attached to including of the taxes on these commodities. But still, back to the point, which maybe you will give much more explanation to the viewers, there are few Ugandans who are contributing this GDP.
You know why?
In form of payment of taxes, and we normally refer. You said that you represent the youth. 1 second, you are going to come on. 79% of the population of Ugandans, around 43 million, they are youth.
True.
And yet their contribution to this GDP, it is very difficult. Yet the government is doing all it takes to improve this population, which is even including the youth, the socio-economic livelihood of the youth. Talk of allocating the funds to education, talking of allocating money, because one of the articulation given by the Minister of Finance is that they will allocate funds to the new local governments and basically municipalities and cities. And also the other allocation, the justification was looking at the health, but basically the parish model, which is to enable. One second, you are the one who will interrogate this, because my role is to give you the unknown information, and then maybe you give us the realities. So the parish model, part of the allocation of funds, is referring to the parish model. Then finally, as you come on, I'm trying to unveil this. There is also a justification that because of the need to recover after the COVID-19, the economy is staggering, and there is a need, of course, to fill gaps here and there so that there can be, again, generation of productivity, industrial growth, and so forth. Do you still believe that the generation or the acquisition of this debt has a basis that will lead us to the economic?
The day, Dr. Tindiwa, the day the government will wake up one morning to say that in need, we need tax. And this tax, we don't need it by way of overtaxing the citizens, rather to get other ways, such as one, you talked about some people not paying tax.
I was looking at the dilemma the government is in. Having a population, the majority who are not paying the tax.
This is the solution, because we need also to talk about that vis-a-vis tax revenue and debt. We have a population of youths, which is perhaps around 70% of the population. But the question is, out of the 70% of the population, how many youths are? And I assure you, as a youth, you might end up seeing that 70% pay tax by way of buying sugar, among others.
Really?
That is just a click of an eye. But the main point is, we have many people who don't pay tax.
have many people.
And big wigs.
And that's and big wigs.
An example is, you might add something unlawful, but you're doing it within the law. The Income Tax Act provides for tax incentives.
Tax incentives.
In simple, tax holidays. And many investors, under the meaning of pulling investors to come and invest in the country, they are given tax holidays of perhaps 5 years, even some 10 years, in ensuring that they have a good working environment.
Hold on 1 second. Don't cut your discussion. There's something I'm remembering, and I want to hear your opinion to the viewers. Was it justifiable to have giving the tax incentive and the tax holidays to this exploration of oil, those who are dealing, those companies which have taken the tender? And I've heard that around 10 billion USA dollars that could be
is being lost.
Is being lost
under the name of tax.
You can continue with your
under the name of tax incentive.
You can continue with
if that 10 billion is being brought under the consolidated fund, in addition to the revenue we are able to collect, don't you think that also the 10 billion will avoid or will not make Uganda enter into national debt? That is the first thing to think about. Because an example is, in the Ministry of Health might come up and say that we need this tune of debt or budget. But the oil under the name of tax incentive, and the oil companies are some of the companies or persons who are having tax incentives. I assure you, we have a lot of investors with tax incentives. But two, when we talk about the youth, you see, you talked about the parish development model. And my question was, does the parish model really intend to provide an environment of collecting tax back to the government?
I think maybe to give there is a belief that by allocating funds to the operationalization of the parish model development, they will stimulate productivity, and most especially which will support the youth. And
I believe that since you said beliefs, you see these beliefs. You see, like in political science, we have what we call wishful thoughts. That every time we keep on saying we wish to take power, but you're not moving. So these are the beliefs now incumbent within these particular free agencies, like models, the parish models, whatever. Those are something that is just put in place so that makes we Ugandans beggars in one way or another. But my point is, why doesn't at least the government say that let this money go as a direct loan? Because when you take a loan, even from the government, you're going to be obliged in whatever way to pay it.
But they're not going to give them free money. Still, it is through their circles.
And how is the mode of payment?
The mode of payment, according to the model which I was able to access, the policy document, you will register a group, let's say of 20 youth or 10.
And you get
in a circle. Your group now to one of the bank or a circle, then you obtain the money on loan.
How do you pay?
It is
what if you prefer to pay as a circle?
Of course, they will deal with you. Recovery. There is a recovery policy.
In the model?
It's not like the Ntandikwa.
What is the difference?
And this is important for the viewers to know.
What is the difference of making it a direct loan from the government? Why would you put a parish development model if you can put a direct loan from the government?
I think, Mr. Derek, what we need to appreciate, and for the purpose of the viewers, is to know there is a dilemma which is relating with the issue of the loans you are talking about, getting direct loans, and which the government is trying to solve. I'm not a spokesperson of the government. Understand me very well, but I'm articulating on what the policies are. And in this case, getting a loan from Equity Bank or which is entirely a commercial bank, and with the interest rate which is over, those higher interests, and compared to one which either they are generating it, especially using the postal bank, and which a bit the interest rate is lower. So I think the government, by that initiative, that's what they are trying to show. You may enlighten us, but that's to the actual.
I remember one time. I remember one time ago we had a debate on this particular model among Myogamodo. I believe it can easily resolve that. But in brief, the solutions, I was trying now to indirectly take you to perhaps to some of the solutions on ensuring that this particular...
We were still looking at the opportunities and the challenges.
Yes, and
to relate with our economic growth.
And the
opportunities and challenges.
The challenges, one, also we talked about the tax holidays. I mean, this giving so-called investors a lot of tax holidays forces or compels the government, right? And all other challenges are accrued to the management and utilization of this particular national debt. Because getting a debt is not difficult for Uganda, but how is it utilized? That's where now we have challenges. You know, in getting it, we have what we call management. The management is coupled with deployment of those particular funds. Management is coupled with ensuring that the intention of getting that particular money is being put into proper use.
So, before we go for a break, please kindly give us your analytical view. Before we go for the break, it is relating with opportunities. You as a countryman, and who is even with good aspirations, including to go to the East African Legislative Assembly. And besides that, accounting down on the road for the last, let's say, do you think that the government needs any applause to have borrowed, to have borrowed from this International Monetary Fund and the World Bank? Is there anything to appreciate in terms of development vis-a-vis debt? Because I would like just some few highlights. Because at times people go out, they say there's a problem, but they don't specify whether the problem even intended to be solved. There's a reason why it should be solved. Just in 1 minute as we go for the break.
You see, usually some MPs tend to move a motion on the floor of Parliament of a vote of thanks. I doubt why there is not yet any MOP who has brought a vote of thanks to the government for getting this tune.
The point is the debt is good.
When I say debt is good, I don't mean, you see, generally, not for Uganda government, generally, a debt is not that bad. If at all, the shortfalls and the loopholes.
So have we achieved anything?
We have not. That is why I'm saying that the debt, it can be good in other governments. But now the problem is with the implementer. In a national debt, perhaps, for other purposes too, is having perhaps other intentions. Because I posed an analogy here that we have gotten various loans and we have seen at times some of them behind them they are having good reasons as to why they are getting these loans. Let in fact be told there are good reasons as to why they are getting those loans. But when that money comes, we don't see the reasons being implemented. Rather, we await for the Auditor General's report, among other CSO's reports, to show the level of corruption ongoing in.
Yes, thank you for your submission. We are going for the commercial break, but we will still continue to emphasize and interrogate whether there is any justification for Uganda to go for more debt. And that will be our discussion. Thank you.